To keep seeing more stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you like this video, share your feedback. The Ghost in the Shadows. The crystal chandelier cast dancing reflections across the marble floor of the Grandview Hotel ballroom. Vincent Marcello stood at the edge of the charity gala, a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand. 3 years had passed since the explosion that stole his world, yet he attended these events out of obligation, not joy. His black suit was immaculate, his dark hair perfectly styled, but his gray eyes held the emptiness of a man who had lost everything that mattered. Vincent controlled half the business operations in the city, both legitimate and otherwise, but power meant nothing without her. Natasha. Her name still caught in his throat like broken glass. The police had called it an accident, a tragic malfunction in her car's electrical system. The vehicle had exploded on a remote mountain road, leaving nothing behind but scorched metal and ashes. They never found enough remains to bury. Vincent knew better. In his world, accidents were carefully constructed lies. But despite throwing millions into private investigations, hiring the best trackers money could buy, he found nothing. No evidence, no suspects, no closure. He raised the bourbon to his lips when movement across the crowded ballroom froze him mid-motion. A woman in a midnight blue dress moved through the crowd like water flowing around stones. Her dark hair cascaded down her back in waves he would recognize anywhere. The curve of her neck, the graceful way she held her champagne glass, the slight tilt of her head when she listened to conversations around her. The glass slipped from Vincent's fingers, shattering against the floor. Heads turned at the sound, but Vincent barely noticed. His eyes locked onto the woman as she moved toward the exit. His heart hammered against his ribs with such force he thought it might break through. It was impossible. Completely, utterly impossible. But he knew that walk, those movements, that presence. Vincent pushed through the crowd, ignoring the greetings and attempts at conversation from business associates and politicians. His focus narrowed to a single point, the woman now disappearing through the French doors onto the terrace. He burst through the doors into the cool night air. The terrace overlooked the city, lights sprawling below like fallen stars. Several couples stood at the railing, enjoying the view and privacy, but the woman in blue was nowhere to be seen. Vincent's hands gripped the stone balustrade, his knuckles white. He scanned the gardens below, the parking area beyond, desperately searching for another glimpse. Had grief finally broken him? Was he seeing ghosts now, phantom images of a woman 3 years dead? No. He was certain. That was Natasha. The next morning, Vincent sat in his private office, surrounded by monitors showing security footage from the gala. His head of security, a grizzled former military man named Derek Walsh, stood beside him. They had reviewed the footage 17 times. The woman appeared in exactly 3 frames, each time partially obscured by other guests or decorative elements. Her face never fully visible, always turned away from cameras at crucial moments. Professional. Too professional to be coincidence. Vincent froze the clearest image, studying the partial profile visible between 2 politicians engaged in animated conversation. The curve of her cheek, the elegant line of her jaw. Derek cleared his throat. Boss, with all respect, a lot of women have dark hair and similar builds. The footage quality is not good enough for positive identification. Vincent did not respond. He pulled open a drawer and removed a leather folder, placing it on the desk. Inside were photographs from his wedding, candid shots of Natasha laughing, dancing, living. He held one photo next to the frozen screen image. Derek fell silent. The similarities were undeniable. The tilt of the head, the posture, even the way her fingers curved around the champagne glass matched how Natasha always held her wine. Vincent closed his eyes, fighting the war raging inside him. Hope was dangerous, perhaps the most dangerous thing a man like him could feel. Hope made you vulnerable, reckless, easy to manipulate. But what if she was alive? What if, for 3 years, he had mourned a ghost while his wife lived and breathed somewhere in this city? The rage that followed that thought was cold and calculating. If Natasha had survived, someone had helped her disappear. Someone had let him believe she was dead, let him suffer through endless nights of grief and guilt. And if she had chosen to stay hidden, chosen to let him believe the worst, that betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Vincent opened his eyes, his expression hardening into the mask that made men twice his size nervous. He pulled up another file on his computer, the official accident report from 3 years ago. He had read it hundreds of times, but now he looked with fresh eyes, searching for inconsistencies. The investigation had been handled by Detective Morris Grant, a man Vincent knew was on the payroll of Roman Volkov, his biggest rival in the city's underground economy. At the time, Vincent assumed Roman was simply gathering intelligence, using his corrupt cop to spy on a grieving enemy. But what if there was more to it? Vincent made a call. Within an hour, he had 3 different investigative teams mobilized. One to track the woman from the gala, one to reinvestigate the accident scene with forensic experts, and one to dig into every movement Roman Volkov made 3 years ago. If Natasha was alive, Vincent would find her. And when he did, he would get answers, no matter what it cost. Over the next 2 weeks, Vincent became a man possessed. He barely slept, surviving on coffee and the burning need to know the truth. His business operations continued smoothly under the management of his trusted lieutenants, but his personal focus never wavered. The investigative teams reported back with fragments, pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a complete picture. The woman from the gala had vanished completely. No credit card transactions, no hotel registrations, no digital footprint whatsoever. Professional enough to avoid surveillance in a city where Vincent owned half the cameras. The accident scene yielded more interesting results. A forensic team discovered evidence that the original investigation had been incomplete, possibly deliberately so. Burn patterns suggested the explosion originated from a device planted in the vehicle, not from an electrical malfunction. Murder, not accident. And the investigation into Roman Volkov uncovered something even more intriguing. 3 years ago, Roman had made a massive payment to an offshore account, the same week Natasha died. The account belonged to a shell company that dissolved days after receiving the funds. Vincent sat in his darkened office late one night, staring at the evidence spread across his desk. Every piece pointed to the same conclusion: Natasha's death had been orchestrated, planned, executed with precision. But had she died, or had she disappeared? His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Vincent stared at the screen, his pulse quickening. The message contained only an address and a time, midnight, tonight.no signature, no explanation. Vincent knew it could be a trap. Roman might have learned about the investigation, might be luring him into an ambush. But he also knew, with absolute certainty, that he would be there. Because the address was the warehouse where he and Natasha used to meet in secret, back when their relationship was forbidden, when her father forbade her from seeing the dangerous man who controlled the city's shadows. Only Natasha knew about that place. Which meant either she was alive and reaching out, or someone had tortured that information from her before she died. Either way, Vincent would have his answers tonight. Resurrection of the past. The warehouse stood exactly as Vincent remembered it, a forgotten relic on the edge of the industrial district where shipping containers rusted beside abandoned railroad tracks. No streetlights reached this far, only the pale glow of a distant moon cutting through the clouds. Vincent arrived alone, against every instinct and the protests of Derek Walsh. This moment belonged to him, whatever truth it held. His hand rested on the gun concealed beneath his jacket as he approached the side entrance, the same door he had used countless times 5 years ago. The lock was broken, the door slightly ajar. Fresh footprints marked the dusty floor inside, small prints from expensive shoes. A woman's shoes. Vincent's heart thundered as he moved deeper into the warehouse. Moonlight streamed through broken skylights, illuminating the vast empty space. In the center, beneath the brightest shaft of light, stood a figure in a long dark coat. She turned slowly, and Vincent's world stopped. Natasha stood before him, alive and real, her dark eyes meeting his across the distance. She looked different, harder somehow, her hair shorter than before, her stance that of someone who had learned to fight and survive. But it was unmistakably her. Vincent could not move, could not breathe. 3 years of grief, rage, and unanswered questions crashed over him like a tidal wave. Natasha took a tentative step forward. Vincent. Her voice broke whatever spell held him frozen. He crossed the distance between them in seconds, his hands gripping her shoulders, needing to confirm she was solid, real, not another phantom his broken mind had conjured. How? The word came out harsh, strangled. How are you alive? Where have you been? Tears streamed down Natasha's face, but she did not look away. I need to explain everything. But first, you need to understand that leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done. I thought about you every single day. Vincent's hands dropped from her shoulders. The initial shock was giving way to something darker, colder. You let me believe you were dead. For 3 years, Natasha. 3 years I mourned you, blamed myself, tore this city apart looking for whoever killed you. I know. Her voice cracked. I know what I put you through, and I will never forgive myself. But I had no choice. If I had stayed, if Roman knew I survived, he would have killed us both. The name hit Vincent like a physical blow. Roman Volkov did this? Natasha nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to show you something. I need you to see what happened that night. She reached into her coat and pulled out a tablet, her hands shaking as she pulled up a video file. This is dashcam footage from a truck that was 3 cars behind me on the mountain road. The driver sold it to me for $50,000 and a promise to disappear. The police never knew it existed. Vincent took the tablet, his jaw clenched. The video showed a dark mountain road, headlights cutting through the night. Natasha's silver sedan was visible ahead, rounding a curve. Then, without warning, the car exploded in a ball of flame that lit up the entire mountainside, but that was not what made Vincent's blood run cold. In the seconds before the explosion, the video clearly showed Natasha's car door flying open. A figure rolled out onto the road, tumbling into the drainage ditch just as the vehicle erupted. Vincent watched, frozen, as the figure in the ditch remained motionless while emergency vehicles arrived 20 minutes later. Long after the responders had focused on the burning wreckage, the figure slowly crawled away into the darkness. I had 5 seconds of warning, Natasha said quietly. Someone called my phone, a man I had never heard before. He said one word, jump. I did not think, did not question. I just opened the door and threw myself out. The explosion happened before I even hit the ground. Vincent looked up from the tablet, his mind racing. Who called you? Julian Torres. The name meant nothing to Vincent. Natasha saw his confusion and continued. Julian worked for Roman as a tech specialist, handling communications and surveillance. But he was also Roman's cousin, privy to conversations and plans most employees never heard. Natasha's expression hardened. Julian overheard Roman ordering my death. He could not stop it, but he could give me a chance to survive. Vincent's hands curled into fists. Why did Roman want you dead? Natasha met his eyes steadily. Because I discovered what he was really doing. The money laundering, the human trafficking, the politicians and judges on his payroll. I found documents, Vincent, evidence that could destroy his entire operation and send him to prison for life. Vincent stared at her. During their marriage, Natasha had worked as an accountant for several businesses in the city, including some of Roman's legitimate fronts. She had always been brilliant with numbers, seeing patterns others missed. I was going to bring everything to you, Natasha continued. I had copies of financial records, encrypted communications, witness statements from people Roman had threatened. I was going to give you the ammunition to finally take him down. She paused, fresh tears forming. But Roman found out. Someone in my office was reporting to him. He knew I had the evidence, knew I planned to expose him. So he decided to eliminate the problem permanently. Vincent's mind reeled. While he had been planning their future, dreaming of a life where they could step back from the violence and danger, Roman had been plotting to murder his wife. After the explosion, I was hurt, burned, barely conscious, Natasha said. Julian found me in the ditch. He had been following at a distance, making sure his warning worked. He got me to a private clinic, a doctor who asked no questions and kept no records. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing scars that ran up her arm, the kind left by serious burns and surgeries. I spent 2 months recovering, most of it delirious with pain and fever. When I finally understood what had happened, Julian explained the situation. Roman believed I was dead. The explosion had been thorough enough that there was no way to prove otherwise. If I surfaced, if you knew I was alive, Roman would find out. And next time, he would make sure the job was finished. Vincent's voice was ice. You should have trusted me. We could have protected you, gone after Roman together. And how many people would have died in that war? Natasha shot back. Roman had infiltrated your organization, Vincent. Someone close to you was feeding him information, that is how he knew about my evidence. If I came back, if we went to war, the bloodshed would have been catastrophic. And there was no guarantee we would win. She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. So Julian and I made a different plan. I stayed dead while gathering more evidence, building an airtight case. Julian remained in Roman's organization, feeding me information, helping me document every crime, every transaction, every dirty secret. We have been working for 3 years to build something Roman cannot escape, something that will destroy him completely without starting a war that kills dozens of innocent people. Vincent wanted to rage, to shake her, to demand why she had not trusted him with the truth. But he also understood her logic, hated how much sense it made. In their world, open warfare meant bodies in the streets, civilians caught in crossfire, families destroyed. Natasha had chosen a scalpel over a sledgehammer. Where is this evidence now? He asked. Natasha pulled out a small USB drive. Everything is here. Bank records showing Roman's money laundering through 12 different countries. Video evidence of human trafficking operations. Testimony from victims willing to go public. Communications proving he bribed Judge Catherine Wells, Senator Thomas Bradford, and Chief of Police Martin Stone. She held out the drive. With this, the federal government can dismantle Roman's entire empire. He will spend the rest of his life in prison, and everyone he corrupted goes down with him. Clean, complete, permanent. Vincent stared at the tiny drive that represented 3 years of his wife's life, 3 years of sacrifice and danger. Julian helped you get all of this? Natasha nodded. He risked everything. If Roman ever suspected, even for a moment, Julian would have died horribly. But he believed what we were doing was right. He wanted to make up for the years he spent helping a monster. Where is Julian now? Before Natasha could answer, the warehouse door exploded inward. Armed men poured through, at least 15 of them, weapons raised. Vincent's hand went to his gun, but Natasha grabbed his wrist. Do not, she whispered urgently. There are too many. From the shadows emerged a tall man in an expensive suit, his silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. Roman Volkov smiled, the expression never reaching his cold blue eyes. Natasha Marcello, Roman said, his accent thick with Eastern European roots. Imagine my surprise when Julian finally confessed that you survived. 3 years of deception, right under my nose. I must admit, I am impressed. Vincent stepped in front of Natasha, his body a shield. You are a dead man, Roman. Roman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Am I? You are outnumbered, outgunned, and standing in a building I have surrounded. I think perhaps it is you who should worry about mortality. He gestured, and two of his men dragged forward a bloodied figure. Julian Torres barely looked conscious, his face a mass of bruises and cuts. They threw him to the floor at Roman's feet. "Poor Julian," Roman said mockingly. "He thought he was so clever, stealing my secrets, playing the hero. But loyalty can always be bought, and one of his associates was more interested in money than justice." Natasha started forward, but Vincent held her back. Roman smiled at the gesture. How touching. The great Vincent Marcello, still protecting his dead wife. Or should I say, his ghost wife? Roman pulled out a gun, aiming it casually at Julian's head. "Here is what will happen. You will give me that USB drive, every copy you have made, and every piece of evidence you collected. Then I will decide whether to kill you quickly or slowly." Vincent calculated the odds. 15 armed men, all professionals by the look of them. He and Natasha were unarmed except for his single pistol. Julian was in no condition to help. The situation looked hopeless. But Vincent had not survived 20 years in this business by giving up when the odds turned against him. He caught Natasha's eye and saw the same calculation, the same refusal to surrender. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. "You want the evidence?" Vincent said loudly. "Come and get it." He pulled Natasha behind a concrete pillar as bullets erupted around them. Part 3, Shadows Become Light. Concrete exploded around them as bullets tore through the warehouse. Vincent returned fire, each shot calculated and precise, forcing Roman's men to seek cover. Natasha grabbed a metal pipe from the debris scattered across the floor, her accountant days long behind her. The back exit, Vincent shouted over the gunfire. Through the old loading bay. They ran, keeping low, using the massive support columns as cover. Vincent's mind raced through every detail of the warehouse layout, every advantage they could exploit. He had spent months here with Natasha years ago, learning every corner, every shadow. Behind them, Julian struggled to his feet despite his injuries. With a strength born of desperation, he lunged at Roman, throwing the crime lord off balance. The distraction cost him everything. Roman's gun fired twice, and Julian collapsed. Natasha screamed, trying to turn back, but Vincent pulled her forward. "He gave us a chance. We cannot waste it." They burst through the loading bay door into the rail yard beyond. Vincent's backup plan kicked into action. He had not come completely unprepared. 3 black SUVs roared to life from positions around the warehouse perimeter, headlights blazing. Derek Walsh and 20 of Vincent's best men emerged, weapons ready. The odds had just shifted. Roman's men poured out of the warehouse, finding themselves caught between Vincent's forces and the burning desire to complete their mission. The rail yard erupted into chaos, gunfire echoing off metal containers and abandoned train cars. Vincent pulled Natasha toward the nearest SUV, but she resisted. "Julian is still in there. We cannot leave him." "He is already gone," Vincent said gently but firmly. "He sacrificed himself so we could escape. We honor that by surviving." Tears streamed down Natasha's face, but she nodded. They reached the SUV as Derek provided covering fire. Vincent shoved Natasha into the back seat and climbed in after her. "Drive," he commanded. The SUV peeled away from the rail yard, 2 others following as escorts. Behind them, the firefight continued, but Vincent's men were trained professionals, and they had the advantage of preparation and position. Vincent pulled out his phone, making rapid calls. First to his attorney, then to a federal prosecutor he had cultivated over the years, and finally to a journalist who specialized in exposing corruption. "What are you doing?" Natasha asked, still clutching the USB drive. "Finishing what you started," Vincent replied. "Roman thinks he can eliminate us and bury the evidence. He is wrong. We are going to release everything, tonight, before he has a chance to cover his tracks." Within an hour, they were in a secure location, one of Vincent's safe houses in the financial district. The penthouse apartment had reinforced walls, security cameras on every approach, and enough supplies to withstand a siege. Natasha sat at a laptop, uploading files to secure servers while Vincent coordinated with his contacts. The evidence was damning, more comprehensive than Vincent had imagined. Roman's entire criminal empire laid bare in financial records, video footage, and testimony. The prosecutor is moving fast, Vincent reported. She has federal agents ready to move on Roman's properties within the hour. The journalist is preparing to break the story on every major news outlet simultaneously. Natasha looked up from the laptop, exhaustion and grief written across her features. Julian spent 3 years gathering this. He knew it would probably cost him his life, but he did it anyway. Vincent sat beside her, taking her hand. For the first time since the warehouse, they had a moment to simply exist together, to process the reality of their reunion. Why did he do it? Vincent asked. Help you, betray his own cousin? Natasha's eyes grew distant. Julian told me once that he had a younger sister, Sophia. When she was 17, she was trafficked by one of Roman's operations. Julian tried to save her, but Roman refused to help, said business was business. Sophia died in a shipping container, suffocated with 30 other victims. She wiped her eyes. Julian stayed in Roman's organization, waiting for a chance to destroy him from within. When he learned about the bomb in my car, he saw his opportunity. Save me, help me gather evidence, and finally get justice for Sophia and all the other victims. Vincent pulled her close, feeling the weight of 3 lost years pressing down on them. I am sorry I was not there to protect you. Sorry you had to face this alone. I was never alone, Natasha whispered. Julian was with me. And I thought about you every single day, Vincent. Every morning I woke up wanting to call you, to hear your voice. But I knew the moment I reached out, I would put you in danger. You put yourself in more danger by staying away, Vincent said. Roman had people in my organization. If you had come to me, we could have rooted them out together. Perhaps, Natasha admitted. But I made the choice I thought would save the most lives. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was a coward. But I could not bear the thought of you dying because of me. Vincent tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. What you did took more courage than I have seen in 20 years of this life. You sacrificed everything, your home, your identity, your husband, to do what was right. Julian saw that. He believed in you enough to die for this cause. The laptop beeped, signaling the upload was complete. Simultaneously, Vincent's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, messages from associates, calls from contacts across the city. The story was breaking. They watched on the television as news anchors scrambled to report the massive corruption scandal. Federal agents were shown raiding properties across 3 states. Judge Catherine Wells was arrested at her home. Senator Thomas Bradford was taken into custody at his office. Chief of Police Martin Stone tried to flee but was stopped at the airport. And at the center of it all, Roman Volkov, surrounded by federal agents outside his mansion, his face a mask of rage as he was read his rights. The evidence was too overwhelming, too public now to suppress. Roman's lawyers would fight, but they were fighting against video proof, financial records, and testimony from dozens of victims. He was finished. Natasha sobbed with relief, 3 years of tension finally releasing. Vincent held her as she cried for Julian, for the life they lost, for the future they could finally reclaim. Over the next 72 hours, the full scope of the scandal unfolded. Roman's organization collapsed as members turned on each other, desperate to cut deals with prosecutors. The corruption network reached higher than anyone expected, touching corporate executives, more politicians, even federal officials. Vincent used his influence to ensure the investigators had everything they needed, opening doors and making connections that kept the momentum building. For once, his power in the shadows served a purpose beyond profit and control. On the third day, Vincent and Natasha attended Julian Torres's funeral. It was a small ceremony, just the two of them and a priest. Julian had no family left, no friends who knew what he had done. They buried him in a private cemetery overlooking the ocean. Natasha placed a photograph on his grave, showing him with his sister Sophia, both smiling, both young and full of hope. "Thank you," Natasha whispered to the grave. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for believing in something better. Thank you for giving Vincent and me a chance to be together again." Vincent placed a hand on the headstone. In his world, loyalty was currency, and Julian had paid the ultimate price for his. That kind of sacrifice demanded recognition, demanded remembrance. "Rest easy, Julian Torres," Vincent said quietly. "Your sister can rest easy now too. Roman will never hurt anyone again." As they walked back to the car, Natasha leaned against Vincent, drawing strength from his presence. "What happens now? Roman is in prison, but he still has allies, people who will want revenge." Vincent considered this. His lawyers had already advised him that Roman's remnants would likely target them, seeking retribution for the Empire's fall. But Vincent had faced threats before, and now he had something he thought he had lost forever. "Now we rebuild," he said. "Together this time. No more secrets, no more separation. Can we really have a normal life after everything?" Natasha asked. "After 3 years of hiding, of violence, of loss?" Vincent stopped, turning to face her fully. "Normal was never an option for us, even before all this. But we can have something real, something worth fighting for. We can use my resources to help the victims of trafficking, to support the families destroyed by Roman's operations. We can turn something dark into something that helps people." Natasha smiled, the first genuine smile Vincent had seen since her return. Julian would have liked that. Using the Empire to heal the wounds it caused. "Then that is what we will do," Vincent promised. "For Julian. For Sophia. For everyone who suffered because men like Roman put profit above humanity." 6 months later, the Marcello Foundation opened its doors. Funded by Vincent's legitimate business operations and managed by Natasha's brilliant financial mind, the organization provided resources for trafficking victims, job training for at-risk youth, and support for families affected by organized crime. Roman Volkov's trial became a media sensation. The evidence was so overwhelming that his lawyers eventually advised him to plead guilty in exchange for life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. He would spend the rest of his days in a maximum security federal prison, his empire nothing but a cautionary tale. Vincent and Natasha stood in their new home, a modern house outside the city with gardens and space and light. It was nothing like the fortress-like mansion Vincent had occupied during their separation, nothing like the hidden apartments where Natasha had survived for 3 years. It was a home, simple and real. "Do you ever regret it?" Natasha asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their porch. "The life you had before, the power, the fear you commanded?" Vincent pulled her close. "I regret every day I spent without you. I regret not seeing the threat to you sooner, not protecting you better. But I do not regret where we are now." He kissed her forehead. "We paid a terrible price to get here. Julian paid an even worse one. But his sacrifice meant something. We made sure of that. And every person we help through the foundation, every life we change, that is Julian's legacy continuing." Natasha rested her head on his shoulder. "I spent 3 years living as a shadow, barely existing. Now I feel alive again. Whole again." "You were never a shadow," Vincent corrected gently. "You were light hiding in darkness, waiting for the right moment to blaze back into the world. And when you did, you burned away corruption and evil." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Behind them, 3 years of pain and separation. Ahead, a future they would build together, honoring the sacrifice of a man who believed in redemption. In the city, Roman's former territory had been divided among various factions, but Vincent had withdrawn from that world. His businesses remained, now completely legitimate, transformed from tools of control into engines of positive change. Natasha sometimes visited Julian's grave, bringing fresh flowers and telling him about the lives saved by the Foundation, the families reunited, the victims who found hope and healing. And every visit, she would thank him again for the warning that saved her life, for the courage to stand against his own blood, for believing that even people born into darkness could choose to step into the light. Vincent and Natasha's story became legend in certain circles, whispered about in the same places where Roman's downfall was discussed. The Mafia boss who thought his wife was dead, who mourned for 3 years, only to discover she had become a living shadow, gathering evidence to destroy their greatest enemy. But for Vincent and Natasha, it was simply their life, their truth, their second chance at happiness earned through sacrifice, courage, and unwavering love. They had walked through fire and emerged on the other side, scarred but unbroken, together at last. And that, they both agreed, was worth every moment of darkness they had endured.